going on, everyone? Welcome back here to the MLB DFS Quick Pitch Show here on Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm. We got tons of MLB DFS content coming at you right here. Got Colby Conway with me. Me and him are filling in for John Pemba and James Grande. What's up, Colby?
Nothing too much. Glad to be in here. I mean, 6-game slates are always interesting. The rain isn't making anything any better. I'm going to complain about that for probably the majority of this hour. So I'm getting that out right away. So, when people hear me complain about it, the entire show, I've said it right in the beginning. I'm just sticking to my word.
Yeah. 6-game slate could have turned into a 4-game slate. Who knows? We'll touch on some of that weather in just a minute, but yeah, we'll be going through some DraftKings top plays here, but if you're playing on FanDuel, we can definitely help you set lineups on there as well. But just for pricing purposes and layout here, we'll be talking DraftKings pricing for tonight's main slate, MLB DFS main slate. If you haven't already, go over to Fantasy Alarm right now because you can check out the MLB DFS playbook that's up there, the value plays. If you're into the betting side of things, we got Howard Bender on the best bets. Colby's got his prize picks. I have underdog picks out there. So, we got tons of ways to go, and we'll see if any of them overlap with our preview here for the main slate. You mentioned it, though, the weather. So the Baltimore game, the Reds-Orioles game is definitely a spot to watch. We have a chance of thunderstorms there tonight. And then the Brewers-Mets game is the other one with a smaller chance of rain. So those are the two games to kind of keep your eye on as we get closer to first pitches. And both of those are early games, thankfully. So we'll know either of these games if they're getting off the ground or we get delays or whatnot early on. But just how you're approaching those games, because the Reds-Orioles game got the highest total on the board here. So it's a spot where if you want to play those bets, you kind of have to track it, right?
Ultimately, you're almost going to have two lineups. You're going to have one where you have exposure to, first off, you have to have exposure to Baltimore-Cincy. That game is it's going to be a boatload of runs. It's going to be where the runs are scored. Now, fortunately, like you mentioned, it is one of the earlier games on the slate, if not the earliest. And put them in there, have a contingency plan. We'll sit here, we're here for the next hour and we'll wait and see how it goes. But there's a very real chance that you can have those guys in there. Game gets postponed. You can flip those guys out of there all before the slate. We're not in this weird space where it's the 8:40 game and we're going to go in there with Reds and Orioles. And then next, at 7:30, it's a wash. And now we can only pick from the two games later this evening. If we have to deal with rain on a slate, I guess this would be the most optimal way of doing it, because that way we can have the guys in there as if we're going to use them, but flip them out if we have to, if the game ends up being a wash.
Yeah, and we'll get to some pitchers here in a second, but if you're looking to play, Justin Verlander from the Mets in that other game that has a chance of rain, just kind of keep that in mind. And if, make sure you have a pivot if that game gets canceled or if it is delayed, you just want to avoid the risk at all costs, then just kind of keep that in the back of your mind for Verlander. Or if you want to take a shot on playing a Cole Irvin at 5K on DraftKings, go for it. But I don't think either of us would suggest that tonight. Any other kind of general takeaways or previews that you're looking for tonight's slate before we dive into specific players?
Yeah, the slate's really headlined by two studs on the mound, Spencer Strider, Luis Castillo, maybe a knock below that. You'd put Justin Verlander in that range. It's tough. When Howard Bender and I did the look at the pod first, right away, I was like, I want Spencer Strider. I want Reed Detmers. Those two guys could combine for 20-plus strikeouts tonight. And then next thing you know, we input two hitters, and we're down to $3,200 left per player. And it was tough, and it did a lot. So this slate's really going to be defined how you attack pitching, because if you're going to go with Strider and then like a Detmers type, that's a good chunk of your money you're already putting towards those guys on the mound. So you're going to have to make decisions from there. But as we look at this, you're going to hear a lot. Texas is going to be the most popular stack. Thank God there's not any weather there, because if that was the case, I'd be off. I'd probably just jump off here, because I'm just not going to play the slate if I have rain in those two games where those are the offenses I want. So it's going to come down to what you do with pitching. That's going to be the first big decision, because if you're going to pay it for two studs, good luck getting Ohtani. Good luck putting Acuna in there. It's going to be very tough to get studs alongside two high-priced pitchers.
All right, well, let's dive right into the pitching then, because you mentioned Spencer Strider on DraftKings, the most expensive guy there at 12.6. very pricey, but obviously for him with his strikeout upside against the Twins lineup that is striking out a ton this year. So yeah, I can understand why he's priced up like that at home for him as well. But him, Luis Castillo, obviously the other stud on this slate, Sonny Gray in that top tier as well, and then we'll throw Justin Verlander in that top upper echelon there. Who are you going with? You mentioned Strider. Is this a spot where you're kind of figuring things out after him?
I mean, I would love to. I did get some good value when we did the lineup recently when Howard and I did it on the pod previewing the slate. Looking at it,
Yeah.
I want Strider so darn bad because this is literally the matchup that you dream for with a guy like Strider. He's already a big strikeout arm to begin with. Now he gets arguably the most advantageous matchup for a starter in, at least over the last 2 weeks. That offense strikes out nearly a third of the time. Byron Buxton has the back spasms. He's not in this lineup. So an already crappy lineup looks more crappy. And it benefits Strider. And if I'm not mistaken, when I was looking on Prize Picks, I'm pretty sure his strikeout line's at 9.5 strikeouts. Yeah. So we're saying double digits or not. And I mean, he can certainly get there. He's starting to implement that change up a little bit, at least as a third pitch, even if it's just a show me pitch. But I mean, when you look at it, much better his last time out against Philly. And even at his worst, he's a 6 to 7 strikeout guy. That's his floor is so high. The win, he should be fine for a win tonight. I think Atlanta's going to be fine against Sonny Gray, so he should be in line for a win. But really, if we're paying 12-6 for Strider, I got to be pretty darn near confident I'm getting 10 strikeouts. And he's done it. He's done it against better offenses than Minnesota. I'll tell you that. So if we have the money, he's got to be the ace we consider.
Yeah, the strikeouts there, it's like, on DraftKings and probably other sports books, it's the prop is at 9.5, as you mentioned on Prize Picks too. It like taking the over there is really tough to do, but if there was ever a matchup where he could post another double-digit strikeout outing, it's against this Twins lineup at home for him as well. So yeah, it's pricey, but there's obvious upside here. How about Castillo when you're looking at him, because he's been phenomenal at home and gets the Nats here at home as well, so a great spot for him. But him versus Sonny Gray on the road in Atlanta, it's a tough spot for him, but he's been good this year.
Castillo at home is a very good play. At home, he is money. I believe his ERA is like 2. It's in the mid to low 2s, I believe, at home this year. Am I correct with that?
Got it up on here, 203.
Yeah. Okay, so very low 2s. So yeah, kind of partially right there. The walks have been odd of late. Like he is not. If you look at his game log, what he's been in terms of like in the walk department, he has not. That is not him. He is not a 10 walks over his last 10.2 inning guy. That is not who he is. So I'd expect him to bounce back. Washington doesn't necessarily strike out a ton per se. And if we're going to make like general blanket statements about the offense, they're better against lefties than righties. So that also is benefiting Castillo. I do really like him tonight. And if you're going to pivot off Strider, you are saving $1,600. And that could be the difference from a $3,000 player to a $4,600 player, which on DraftKings can make a big difference. So it'll be interesting when you look at the percentage forecaster that we have over at Fantasy Alarm. I'm looking here. Strider's at 32%, the most popular starter. Not really a surprise. Dream matchup. But I mean, Castillo's down there at 17% with 2 other pitchers favored to be or drafted or used more than him. So it could be an interesting spot to go with Castillo instead, save the $1,600. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like he can easily go out there 7 innings of 1-run ball with 6 strikeouts and easily pay off this investment. Like he's in a very good spot for a win. I know his offense stinks, but he's in a good spot.
Before we touch on other starters here, is it possible at all to get both these guys in the same lineup on DraftKings where you got these 2 pitcher spots? Or is it, I don't know if you probably haven't even ventured to play around with lineups with the 2 high priced guys in, but I mean, are you going that route at all or just kind of avoiding that?
I mean, just by looking at it over here, I put in Strider and Castillo and I'm already down to $3,300 a player. So can it be done? Sure. You're going to have to get pretty contrarian with the hitters and find the good values. And I do believe there are some good values right around that $3,300 like will come through to kind of use to fill out our lineup. Mm-hmm. If that Cincinnati-Baltimore game was playing, I think it'd be very attainable to do that because guys like Kevin Newman, who's I guess could be hitting leadoff. If that game plays, he's pretty cheap. Jordan Westberg making his debut would be cheap. Like there's definitely some options you could do it. It'd be fun to try to mess around with it. I just don't know if it's going to be something that I could be like, if we don't look at the pitchers, is this lineup junk? And I don't know if I could confidently say that it's good enough with the hitters. I mean, they're going to give us a ton of fantasy points, but boy, I think that'd be really contrarian on this slate to go with both of those two.
Okay. So yeah, contrarian play if you want to go that route. All right. So then the rest of the pitching pool here, not a ton of good options here. You mentioned you like Detmers at the start here. Give us the breakdown for him and why you like him tonight, and any other pitchers. Who's your top pitchers besides Strider and Castillo?
Yeah, if it were up to me, Strider and Detmers would be the two that I like. Those two can combine for 20 strikeouts on the slate. As bad as Minnesota has been, really in general. I mean, if we're being honest, in general, the White Sox have been just as bad against left-handers. And that puts Detmers in a very good spot. Dylan Cease has been better of late, but not really a guy I want to go with here. And I do think that Angels offense will get to him. Detmers has been far better at home this year. Strikeout rate north of 31%, I believe, at home this year. And when you look, he's been darn good of late. I mean, he's got 8 strikeouts and 3+. The walks are, by his standards, under control. And he's getting deep-ish in 2 ball games here. I mean, 2 earned runs over his last 18 2/3 innings. And I mean, if you're going to get 8 strikeouts against the Dodgers, the Rangers, who we're going to talk about them as one of the best offenses in baseball against southpaws, and the Cubs, there's no reason to believe he can't get 8+ tonight against a White Sox. Outside of Luis Robert, does not hit lefties at all. I think Detmers on a point per dollar basis, he just might be my favorite pitcher on this whole slate.
All right. Yeah. If he's giving you 30 DraftKings points, then, why not for that price? And if you guys haven't already, go check out the Prize Picks video, as I mentioned, up on Fantasy Alarm, because Colby has a prop there for Detmers that he likes. So if you want to get action on that, as well as get him in your DFS lineup, go watch that video right now. It's a short video, so you get time, and it's free about Fantasy Alarm. All right, so any other pitchers that you're looking at, or just kind of Detmers and moving on?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much I've locked in on Strider / Castillo and then Detmers there. Verlander's interesting to an extent. I don't love it, but there is strikeout potential against Milwaukee, and outside of that outing against Atlanta, which when you face Atlanta at this point, we can't really hold much to you. That offense is just too darn good. But Yankees and Houston been a little bit better. Would like to see higher strikeouts from him, but Milwaukee is going to play him up a bit there. If you're comfortable with the weather, I think you can look at Verlander. I think people may be scared off of him for that reason with the weather. Don't like Dylan Cease. I'm not as high on Andrew Heaney as others are. Detroit's been not exactly horrible against lefties, and I don't know. I mean, he's going to get plenty of run support. He'll be in line for a win. It's just I can't pay $700 more from Detmers to go up to Heaney, but I also don't know if you can get by the slate without having Strider or Castillo. Like, I think you have to have one of them at least, unless you're going to just say, screw it, I'm going to go with Detmers and Heaney, and we're going to load up on bats and hope to nail them outside of this Baltimore-Cincy game that we may or may not get. But below that, I'm only targeting Matthew Boyd in terms of the hitters against him, so take that for what it's worth. I talked about Trevor Williams just because Seattle strikes out a ton. If he's an interesting play, but going against Luis Castillo, his chances for a win are just diminished. So, yeah, not him, not Colin Ray, and then Brandon Williamson. If that game plays, I would love to stack against him. So that'll tell you what you need. That'll tell you what you need to know there. But really, pitching, you're paying up. You're paying at least $7,000 for both your pitchers. If not, one's going to be in the 10K plus range, and the other one's going to hang out in the 7 to 8 to 9 range.
Yeah, I like the call on Detmers, especially when he's priced below. Cease, as you mentioned, could have run into trouble with the Angels. Heaney, I gave out the under on his strikeout prop on the betting show we just had with Howard, because the Tigers lineup has been just a little bit better over the last month or so. And they have a low strikeout rate against lefties actually over the past month. So that's a spot where I don't see a ton of strikeout upside there for Heaney. I mean, he could obviously, probably get the win against the Tigers with the Rangers offense behind him, but the upside isn't totally there as a guy like Detmers, as you were talking about. So, and yeah, honestly, a lot of these names, when Boyd, Williams, Colin Ray, I mean, just I don't want to play any of them in my lineup if when I can have Detmers there.
Yeah, well, on most slates too, when you see a Boyd, Williams, Ray, or Williamson, those are guys you're stacking against. It's only
Exactly.
because a 6-game slate it even becomes like
Yeah.
well, maybe do we try it on this slate because it's so small? And the answer still is no. You stack against those guys. That's the rules. We don't make them, but we follow them.
Yeah, it's super contrarian to roster Brandon Williamson tonight for sure. So, all right. So then on to catcher here. Who are your top catchers? Obviously, Adley Rushman in that Reds Orioles game is the highest priced guy here. But in that top tier, 4K and above tier, we got Travis d'Arnaud, Jonah Heim, Cal Raleigh, Wilson Contreras, or that's not Wilson. I always get these guys mixed up.
That's fine. William
Contreras, yes. Tyler Stevenson. Who are you going with these top catchers, or are you maybe looking elsewhere?
It's a 2-horse race behind the dish, really, and it's Adley Rushman. His numbers are better against lefties. Always like him in his home park, and you look at him, hitless over his last couple of games, but offensively, he's more than fine. He's in a good spot. Williamson can struggle a little bit and has had a home run issue against right-handed hitters this season. So that's something we're going to come back to later, assuming we can get this game. And then outside of Rushman, anytime Texas faces a lefty, one, darn near their whole offense is in consideration. And two, Jonah Heim almost becomes the immediate play behind the dish. I mean, multi-hit efforts in 3 of his last 4. Numbers against the lefties are just excellent. Looking at it here, 902 OPS against lefties in 2023. If you're going to complain about the dearth of offensive talent behind the dish, we're fortunate that we're getting any on a 6-game slate, and you really have your choice between Rushman or Jonah Heim. I really think you have to pay up at catcher tonight just because those are the 2 options that stand above the rest. The only other one to consider, and I wish his numbers were better of late, but Francisco Alvarez is better against righties than lefties. So he would be intriguing in that matchup, but he's just been slumping of late. So I'm really just locked in on Heim and Rushman really behind the dish for this slate.
Yeah, the Heim against lefties is definitely the way to go when he's on the slate. And the catcher position, obviously, because it's a smaller slate, it just kind of gets ugly once you get past that top tier. So, I don't think many, unless you're stacking, doing like a, because Kirk Casale's there at 2,100 if you're doing a red stack and want to go contrarian with Casale there and wrap around to the top. But I don't know if he's going to be part of that stack. All right, so then any other catches before we move on to first base?
No, you got to see some other lineups maybe if you want to check out a guy maybe that comes in with value. I mean, if you just want to catch or not strike out, you can go K-Bear Ruiz, but I don't really love attacking Luis Castillo. I'm not going to fault anybody if you want to play Mitch Garver instead of Jonah Heim. I'm cool with any Texas bat against Matt Boyd tonight. I'd still prefer Heim, but you can save a couple $100 there. I just haven't had a build that I've liked that hasn't had Adley Rushman or more often Jonah Heim behind the dish.
Yeah, and you mentioned Heim is probably the safer route if you want to avoid any rainouts for the Orioles-Reds game. But, well, yeah, keep in mind, that's about less than 2 hours away, that first pitch. So we could have the weather changing any minute now. First base here, Shohei Ohtani, the highest priced guy there, as he usually is at first base now that he's, he is first base eligible. Matt Olson, Pete Alonso, Spencer Steer, Brandon Drury, Nathaniel Lowe, in that top tier. Are you looking anybody in that top tier? We do have Steer in that Cincy Baltimore game.
Yeah, Steer's numbers against lefties have fallen off a little bit, so he's kind of, I don't want to say less intriguing, but just not kind of one that I like. If that game's going to play, is Kevin Newman first base eligible? Given his DraftKings, I think anything's in play. If Ohtani, cool. For a guy doesn't, I mean, technically he is playing first base, so he could work. But he hits leadoff against lefties for this Reds team, and if you want to stack Reds, it's not many times in popular stacks on a slate you can get the leadoff hitter for sub 3 over on DraftKings. And listen, it's not a sexy play. I'll be the first to admit it, but DraftKings points are DraftKings points, and he's going to be in a good spot because it's the right-handed bat should fare well against Baltimore if this game plays. So you can lock him in 2,800 if that game's going to play. I mean, he's a near lock at first base. I mean, I'm never going to fault somebody for playing Shohei Ohtani, the first baseman, which I would love to see because I think that'd be really cool and really justify this positional tag that's been slapped on him here. Pete Alonso, if you like the weather in that game, I'm fine. Like Howard Bender said that the Mets were a contrarian stack on this slate, and I've come around to it a little bit more from when he first said it. So like Alonso's fine. Drury's a lefty killer. Cease has had more issues with lefties than righties, but Drury has been hot, so I'm okay going with that route. Ty France, I guess you can consider him against righties. First base is one of the uglier positions on this slate if you're trying to get any sort of value, because outside of Kevin Newman, it's interesting. And looking at like the draft percentage forecast over at Fantasy Alarm, I mean, there's no first baseman projected over like 10-ish%. Like there's not much to have there. It's like Spencer Steer, which I'm not super keen on in this one. Spencer Torkelson. If you have the money, I'd almost just pay up with Pete Alonso, hope that game plays, and just go with that. Or if you have even more money, again, never going to fault anybody for playing Ohtani.
Yeah, Newman should be popular, right? Just a popular value overall, whether you're playing him at first or at third. We'll get to third base in a minute here, but just a sub 3,000 value for batting leadoff in the highest total on the slate. I mean, and facing Cole Irvin here, so obviously a good matchup. So yeah, good call on him being a top value. The Alex Kirilloff being 3,400, but he's been so cold. I mean, when you look at someone hitting second and he's that cheap, you might tend to look at it, but he's been so cold lately. It's just like it's really hard to go to him right now, especially against Strider, right, on the road.
That's the hard part. Maybe if it wasn't Strider, he'd be an interesting value. But yeah, I just when you look at a guy like Strider too, fastball slider combo, he's just going to pepper with heat, and then he's got that back foot slider that he can use at his disposal if he wants to attack lefties with it. That one's going to be tough. I mean, and if he's going to mix in a changeup too, righty changeups tend to wreak havoc on lefties more often than not, and it's a pitch that would, in theory, run away from him. So I hate to say this, but I've completely just written off every Minnesota bat. Okay. I'm just going to be honest. Like I don't know if you're going to find the value with it. And the only reason I could consider justify playing one of those is, well, Strider's had some home run issues of late. Okay, well, now I got to pick the guy that hits the home run, because I'm going to pick the guy that hits the home run, or he's going to be 3 of Strider's probably 14 strikeouts that he has tonight. Like that's what we're looking at with this slate. These 6-game slates are as aggravating as they are fun. And I think that's a great way of describing it.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kirilloff. He could account for 2 or 3 of those strikeouts tonight. So
I mean, that whole lineup could. Like, you never know with Strider. And as I'm looking here for 2023 numbers for Strider against lefties, he's got a 37% strikeout rate against lefties, 40% against righties. So I mean, he's been obviously very good against both, but I mean, he's the strikeouts are high against both. So I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze with Kirilloff.
We're going to comment here in chat on YouTube. Ryan Schnabel asking, he's torn between Cease and Heaney as one of his pitchers tonight. If you had to choose between those guys, when we briefly touched on both, but if you had to choose between those, who are you going with?
I'm with you in terms of I have concerns with Heaney's strikeout numbers in this one.
Yeah.
I think I would go Cease. To Cease's credit, as much as I hate to say it because I'm about as pro Detmers as you can be tonight, Cease has pitched better of late. Like when you look at his recent stats, if you go back to Pitcher Quick and pull up Cease's game logs, it's been better. I mean, he's got 19 Ks over his last 11 and a third, two or less earned runs in 4 straight. By his standards, the walks are semi under control. They'll let him go. I want to say let him go deep into games, but maybe the better way of saying it is they just let his pitch count get near triple digits every time, and it's fine. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at it, 19 plus in 4 straight at his price tag, you're looking 2.5%. I don't know. Heaney just feels like a trap. The more I look at the numbers, if he's not going to get the strikeouts, can Detroit click a little bit? I think they could. And Cease just has the higher strikeout upside for me, so that's going to boost the fantasy total. So between those two, I think I'm leaning Cease.
All right. Yeah, I mean, Cease, it's interesting. The Angels offense is definitely, dangerous. And, thanks, fellas. Love the show. Russ says Ryan Schnabel. Appreciate you commenting and watching here. Hopefully you can, we picked the right one for you there. But it's funny because this Angels offense. I just talked about it with Howard Bender on the last Better Sports Betting show. The Rockies won that series over the weekend, even though the Angels exploded for 20 plus runs in that one game. This Angels offense can tend to go dark at times, and Cease has the potential to shut them down for sure. So, yeah. All right, going to I guess rest of first base. Any other guys we didn't touch on, or you want to move on to second here?
I'm fine moving on to second. I think Ty France is going to garner a little bit of ownership, but I believe he's hit lefties better than righties, so he's there. I don't really want to be in the Andrew Vaughn sweepstakes. Spencer Torkelson is fine. I guess if you want to, could go the lefty crime against Boyd and just further add to that Texas stack. But, man, I would love to play Kevin Newman just because – if we're going to pay it for pitching, I need some value somewhere, and I can't play him at third because I don't care what anyone has to say. There's only one option at third base tonight, but we'll get there when we get there.
We will get there. All right, second base here at the top of the pricing range on DraftKings. We got Marcus Semien, Ozzie Albies, Jonathan India, Matt McClain, Brandon Drury in that top tier as well. And then kind of a drop off to Tim Anderson and the rest here. Looking at one of these top guys, obviously Semien always in play, even especially against Matthew Boyd here. Or then we got India and McClain hitting 2-3 in that Cincy lineup.
Yeah, it's going to come down to if you're going to stack Reds, you could look at India and McClain. I don't like their numbers against lefties, so I may be a little bit less inclined to go them. If you're stacking Texas and you have the money, Semien's in a great spot, just like pretty much all right-handed hitters are in that lineup. It's just going to be a matter of can you afford him at $6,100. That's ultimately the big question here with them. And beyond that, I like Albies against lefties. Sonny Gray's not a lefty, so I'm kind of out on him. We talked about Drury a little bit already. I don't want anyone against Strider. Colin Rea, with Jeff McNeil facing him, lefties have done okay against him. If you believe the weather's going to hold, you go for him, but his recent run of production hasn't been anything inspiring, to say the least here. One guy that's interesting, and I do believe, I'm looking at it here, who was on playbook today at Fantasy Numbers? So Vreeland was on the playbook today, and he did talk about at second base Jose Caballero for Seattle. That's one I do like, just because he's a bit cheaper. I prefer playing him against lefties, but he does have a couple hits over the last, his last handful of games, couple walks. He's a very cost efficient option tonight. And going against Trevor Williams, as much as I think Seattle strikes out a ton, you can get to him. Like he's not a world beater by any means. So Caballero could give us some financial flexibility.
Yeah, and probably hitting ninth in that order. So if you wanted to do like a wraparound and use like a Julio Rodriguez hitting, probably second or third in that Seattle lineup too, it could be an option.
And with Caballero too, I'll say this, when you look in June, he may only be hitting 216 against righties, which isn't ideal, but he's only struck out a handful of times. He has more walks than strikeouts, and he has quite a few stolen bases. So, it may be an ugly 10 DraftKings fantasy point for him tonight, maybe like a 1-for-4 with a single, a walk, a stolen base, and a run scored, but it doesn't have to be pretty. 10 points is 10 points. And he can certainly do it. If he hits ninth or just lower in the order, get on base, let the top of the order do some damage, he may not be bad for 2,600.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about David Fletcher here down at 2,100 because he's back for the Angels here. Back from AAA, and he went 4 for 6 in that 25 run game for the Angels, and 0 for 2 yesterday, back down to earth, but. He was lighting up AAA, and I feel like he's a bat once he gets start. We saw it a couple of years ago. Once he gets hot at the plate, he's kind of a guy to ride. And 2,100 is like really cheap for a guy that could give you a couple hits tonight. Am I crazy to think about him, or is it an option?
Nothing on a 6-game slate is crazy unless it's playing one of those pitchers that we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah.
That's about the only thing that's crazy you can go with. But yeah, Fletcher's a guy, he puts the bat on the ball. He's not going to strike out a ton, 272 hitter for his career against right-handed pitching. I think there's something to like there with him, and his ownership should be like whatever the opposite of through the roof is, through the floor. Whatever is minimal as possible. Like I don't think many people are going to be on him.
No.
I definitely think it's an option. And two, he should have second base and shortstop on DraftKings, so you could kind of build your lineup and then just say where do you need help, slide him in there, or it's like oh I want to get up to Marcus Semien from wherever I'm at, drop it shortstop to Fletcher and go from there. I don't think it's crazy at all. I mean, sure, 4 hits outside of that hasn't really went 0 for quite a bit the other day, but he puts the bat on the ball. He's willing to take ball 4. And Angels, Cease is prone to a blow up every now and again. That's the only thing that scares me with him. As good as he can go out there and maybe 10 strikeouts and no earned runs, he could go out there and strike out 4 and allow 7 earned runs. Cease is a mixed bag. I'm okay with cautiously targeting him. And for 2,100 with Fletcher, I mean, a single and a run, and we're almost at two times our investment already, if not higher.
Yeah, if it helps you get in, you mentioned like if you want to put him at short and you go with Marcus Semien, or you want to get in an Ohtani or Corey Seager at short, and you put Fletcher at second, it could be a way to go. Well, before we get to third, any other short second baseman that we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention?
No, I think that's the most of it on the slate. Andy Ibanez, if he could potentially be in play, but I mean, outside of him, no thanks. I'd rather just take Caballero or go down to Fletcher. It's pretty much it.
Yeah, Ibanez 2,500 on DraftKings. All right, third base. You said there's one guy and one guy only that you're playing, right? Who is it?
Josh Jung.
Okay, yeah. And Howard Bender gave out his hits, runs, RBIs prop over on the Better Sports Betting Show, so I know he's on that, and significantly cheaper than Riley and De La Cruz here. So, all right, sell me on Josh Jung here.
Facing a lefty. That's it.
Yeah.
Leave it at that. But no, he's good. I mean, you see your hits in each of the past couple games. For him to not be the most expensive priced, I understand why he's not with Ellie De La Cruz and I guess Austin Riley with the way he's been playing of late. But whenever this guy and this whole offense faces a lefty, we have to take note. And when you look at Jung, I mean, just crushes lefties. Great matchup against Matthew Boyd, who doesn't get righties out. Jung's at home. This offense is better at home. If I'm not mistaken, as a team, they have the best OPS in their home park in baseball, and they're one of the best against lefties. So, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a dream come true there for him. So I'm all aboard the Josh Jung train tonight. If there's anything like a lock and load, like I open the lineup, go in there, it's like I blink and Jung's already in third base. I don't know what happened. I blacked out in that little bit, but he's there every single time.
Yeah, the Rangers against lefties in general, but Jung is for sure one of the names you want to get in your lineup. So, yeah, and he's at third in that Rangers lineup. Very tasty. So I like that. All right. So what about the other guys? I mean, Ellie De La Cruz been killing it. So tough to fade him at any point right now, or this whole Reds lineup. But very expensive now on DraftKings, 5,800. They really priced him up now. Austin Riley there. He's it's crazy to see Austin Riley cheaper than Ellie De La Cruz now, but that's the case there. But Austin Riley, Nick Senzel, Jake Berger, any other guys in these top tier here?
If there wasn't weather, I love Nick Senzel. He crushes lefties. Looking at the numbers are exceptional for him. Lefty hit him at a 429 clip with an OPS over 1,100 this season. Had 2 hits yesterday. His numbers in recent games don't look that great, but they haven't faced a ton of left-handers. So he'd be very interesting. Probably slots in at outfield better because, again, Josh Jung's my third baseman, and I'm not wavering off that. So he'd probably have to move him to the outfield, but he's in a very good spot. And if it's just the darn weather, it's a perfect spot for a Nick Senzel night, but we'll have to see if we get that game or not. If you drop down, I think it's dropped down a bit in pricing. Eugenio Suarez is very interesting. When you look at it, he has a little bit of a track record for the BVP truthers out there. It's not anything great, but he does have 3 home runs and 25 at bats against Trevor Williams. Has 6 homers on the year against righties. When you look at a little bit more, he has a couple home runs at home, and Williams splits. They're more beneficial for lefties than righties. But if you're going to go the Seattle offense, I mean, he's a threat to leave the yard on nearly every swing. I know we haven't seen it of late, but if he's going to keep stringing games like he has recently, like those doubles for a guy like him, those doubles eventually become home runs. It's a matter of time that they'll happen and they'll come for him. He's got multiple RBIs. The fantasy points of late look pretty good. 3,400 Suarez is not a bad play.
Yeah, shout out to our producer, Adam Bernard, by the way, killing it on the Better Sports Betting Show and this show as well. But he reminded me that on the last show, Better Boss on YouTube was commented saying that he was big on Eugenio Suarez. So if our leader, Matt Deutsch, is right, then Suarez could go deep here. He could have a good game. So I know the stats don't totally back it up, but he's got that home run, history, I guess, against Williams. So could go deep here for sure. I think he was like plus 400 on DraftKings to go yard if you want to go that route as well. All right, so then any other third baseman here that you're looking at? Kevin Newman, we mentioned, he's hitting leadoff for the Reds, and he is that third base eligible. So keep that in mind. If you don't want to play him at first, you could play him at third here. All right, any other third baseman before we move on to short?
In the DFS playbook over at Fantasy Alarm, Justin Verlander highlighted Brett Batty. Interesting play. I could get behind it a little bit. Rhea does struggle against lefties, so he does have that going for him. A couple multi-hit games here in his last 5, so you got to like that as well. So, I mean, he's another option, and 3,000 is a pretty affordable price for him. It's just a matter of if you like this Mets offense against Conrad. If you do, Brett Baty becomes a guy that you're going to look at. If not, you'll probably fade him. We just need a little bit more thump. Like when you look here, we do have the multi-hit games, multi-runs. A couple strikeouts are mixed in. Just there hasn't been the thump, no extra base hits. But at 3,000, I mean, when you look at it here, 3 of these 5 games, he's paid off 2 times the investment. So you can definitely go with him. I wouldn't mind him. It's just it's pretty much Josh Jung or bust for me at third. But if you're going to get a little bit contrarian, you could definitely look at some of those other guys.
Yeah, Brett Baty hitting 9th is like really just worrisome to me too. Like it seems like that guy could be if he was obviously hitting 5th, I would be a lot more on him. But hitting 9th is kind of, I mean, I guess you could do like a little wraparound or something if you wanted to play like a Pete Alonso or Lindor, whatever. But I think hitting 9th is a tough look for Brett Baty, especially if you're playing him over your guy, Josh Jung. So.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to play a 9-hole hitter, like we'll probably talk about it here when we get to the outfield, because I'm assuming he's playing 9th, the guy that we'll talk about later. But if you're doing the 9-hitter, you almost have to be. It's got to be part of a stack. Where you're stacking the early part of the lineup, the 9-hole hitter is the second leadoff hitter. He's going to turn the lineup over. It's pretty tough to do one-off plays with 9-hole hitters unless you're strapped for cash. So, and I don't know if we'll quite be in that spot here, but yeah, if you're gonna play Baty hitting 9th, you're committed to a Met stack. I don't think you can play him as a one-off.
Yeah. All right. Then going over to shortstop here, Corey Seager, the highest priced guy there for the Rangers. Ellie De La Cruz is shortstop eligible, so you got him. McLean as well for the Reds. Lindor, Correa. Who do you like in this top tier?
Love Corey Seager, hits lefties pretty well, lefty on lefty crime. I'm not really looking at Ellie De La Cruz tonight against lefties. His numbers aren't as impressive. So I think you can fade him tonight, aside from weather concerns. Vreeland talks about Francisco Lindor and Willy Adames in the article. I do like Willy Adames against righties, so he could be an interesting play there. A couple nights ago, had a 4-hit effort, and a couple nights before that, a multi-hit game. He's got the power, he's got the thump, so I think he could be a guy that you consider. Looking here, does he have any track record against Verlander? 2 for 9 with a homer, so not great, but I mean, he does have a home run against him, so you can take that for what it's worth. Yeah, so at least there's that. He at least squared him up once, so we know that. But Lindor is interesting. I think, again, if you're going to look to stack Mets, this shortstop position is just if the Baltimore pitcher was a right-hander. The shortstop position becomes very fun, because then you can sell me on De La Cruz and or McLean, because we can obviously move De La Cruz around. But the other thing too, and I'll flip the tables and ask it to you. If this Baltimore Cincy game plays, Westberg is making his MLB debut. He's going to be minimum priced. Can we consider that a free square?
Yeah, I think. And Mark Pitts in our YouTube chat is asking just that. It feels like Westberg called today. I mean, listen, the guy's coming in with it's funny because the Orioles are trying to pull a page from the Reds playbook here, just start calling up their guys, maybe feel the youth movement going. They already have a couple of studs in Henderson, Rushman, but I think they're looking for Westberg to also bring some of that juice. And yeah, so he is. Where is he hitting in the lineup? I saw it earlier. He is hitting 7th in the lineup. So I mean, not great. He's not hitting 4th right off the bat like Ellie De La Cruz, but even so, mid price. It's just everyone's going to play him right in this high total atmosphere. And Brandon Williamson is not a good pitcher, so I think a lot of the Orioles bats will have success.
And if you are doing the Strider Castillo contrarian play, you have to play Westberg. The price is too cheap, and he's going to be there. And I'm looking at his minor league numbers now for 2023, and numbers against righties were better. 17 of his 18 homers were actually against righties compared to lefties. But again, you get a little bit of that debut magic. Maybe you can get a base hit or two. And I mean, at $2,000, all he has to do is get 4 at bats, and we'll probably be okay. Like he was seeing the ball well enough. He's going to be fine. So I agree with Mark. To me, shortstop feels like, I mean, not to use their exact words, but it feels like Westberg and call it a day. I mean, I think that's as true a statement as we're going to find. It's a good spot, weather aside. It's a good spot, and he's just too darn cheap. A base hit, a walk, a base hit, and a run, a walk and a run, and we're already 2 times our money. So I'm praying this game plays because he gives us so much financial flexibility. I love it.
Yeah. And the thing with Westberg, and it happens with any, top prospect that gets the call up, whether, maybe not as much with pitchers, but especially with hitters, there's just like that shiny new toy aspect where if you follow baseball and you play MLB DFS, you bet on baseball, whatever, you just want to play them in your DFS lineup. You want to add them onto your fantasy baseball team. You want to bet their overs and props. It's just, I'm victim to it too. And it usually, I mean, Ellie De La Cruz was a different story. He came out on fire already, and he was, he was lighting it up in minors, so it's no surprise. But Westberg, joining this Orioles lineup, and I think hitting 7th is kind of it's a good thing for him. He's not going to be asked to be, in the top of the order right away. He's going to have to try to prove himself here. Hitting 7th, I think there's some upside there. So, yeah, I think you mentioned if people are playing, any other studs, but especially Strider, Castillo, or any of these big bats from the Rangers, this is going to be a guy that's going to be very popular. So, yeah, mid price, just hard to not play him at short.
Yeah, and that's what it's going to come down to. And in theory, if you like the Baltimore stack, there's going to be guys on base when he comes up, and a hit or two with an RBI is going to give us more that we need. And when you just look at it, I mean, it's a very good spot. Like you can't say it enough. It's a very good spot for him. It is his debut. Like I said, a little bit of that debut magic. He's giving you financial flexibility. You're not really sacrificing a ton of upside. I mean, honestly, weather's the biggest concern with playing him tonight, because I think his numbers will be fine. I think he's going to do fine in that offense. It's just going to be, does he get the at-bats? And if Mother Nature lets us have this game.
Yeah, right. And by the way, I'm in the DC area. I'm probably about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour from Baltimore, and it's not raining right now, but there is just in the forecast just chance of thunderstorm, especially later tonight. So, just for what it's worth, it's just that thing where it's it's not raining, but it could start downpouring. I do think they play the full game. It seems like there might be a little bit of a delay at the start, but as the night goes on, there's a better chance that they get the full game in. So, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind for what it's worth for that game. All right, moving on to outfield here. Before we build you guys a lineup here, who are your top outfielders between, the top prices here? Acuna, Ohtani, Trout, Adolis Garcia, Julio Rodriguez. Who do you like in this top range?
I won't fault anybody for playing any of those 5 that you mentioned, to be honest. I can get it. You can sell me on it. Love Ohtani. I prefer, Ohtani at the first baseman, obviously, because we won't see it in real life, but we get it on DraftKings. So
one day.
Well, I don't know. Maybe. It'd be cool. It'd be cool to see him there, but I'll never fault anybody for playing Acuna or Ohtani with the way they're hitting. You can roll with Trout. Garcia's fine in a stack against Boyd and the Detroit Tigers, so I'm all for it there. If you're not playing Detmers, Luis Robert is absolutely exceptional against lefties. If I'm not mistaken, he homered twice yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
twice, and
Yep.
then homer the day
Once
before.
the day before. Yeah. So we got 47 DraftKings points over his last 2 games. He's been excellent against left-handed pitching. He'd be a one-off play. I'm not stacking against Detmers, but Robert would be is an expensive one-off play, but you could certainly do it with him. Nick Senzel, we already talked about him a little bit. He's got some outfield eligibility, so he's a guy you could look at. If that weather's going to hold, though, Anthony Santander going downtown in that game. I called him. I did the pod with Bender. I said he was my home run call. He's got 4 in his last 5, including 2 multi-hit efforts. He's excellent against southpaws. He's good at home. He is. There's a couple smash spots on this slate, and he's one of them.
Yeah, and his price is really affordable compared to the top price guys there, especially in outfield category there. So yeah, like much rather pay $4,400 for him than Christian Yelich against Verlander, who's just hit or miss, it seems. So yeah, I like that call. All right, then any other outfielders you wanted to touch on?
Mickey Moniak against a righty. He'll be in the lineup as a lefty. He's had a couple spurts this season. Numbers against righties are more impressive. You can ride the hot bat with him if you want. If you're stacking Rangers, Leody Taveras is in a great spot, even though he's going to hit in that bottom third of the order. He hits lefties well, and all he's got to do is get on base. I think he's 3,300.
There you go. Yep.
I think. Yep. 2 hits in his last game. He's got an RBI, a walk, and when you just look, he's got an ISO that's near 200 at home, so he's better in his home park, much like this whole Texas offense is, to be fair. But 3,300 for him to add to that Texas stack is very affordable, and I actually really like him tonight. I think I said he was my value play, or maybe I said it was Nick Senzel. I don't even remember. I like them both, so I'm fine with either one being my value play there. And then outside of that, Teoscar Hernandez has been better of late. So if you end up looking at an Eugenio Suarez, I think Teoscar's up a little bit. I think he's closer to 4.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay, 3,700. So a little bit, yes, over in his last 2 games, but 2 3-hit performances the games prior. His numbers are trending up. The plate discipline, the peripherals are all ever so slightly improving, and you can go with him. And I mean, if you want to play boom or bust, Eugenio Suarez, Teoscar Hernandez, Jose Caballero, go a little Seattle stack. I don't know if I can get on board with it. I'm cool with picking one of them as kind of a one-off play. But if you want to stack Mariners, maybe throw J-Rod in there too, or JP Crawford if you wanted to. I know we kicked the tires on him a little bit, but those would be your options there. I think outfielder, if we're going to get this Baltimore-Cincy game, like it seems like the thoughts are improving on this, and it's just a delay. Delays don't matter for hitters. It's not like a pitcher where we're worried about them not coming back out again. So I'm not really concerned from the offensive standpoint. We may not need to fill too many spots if we can load up with some of those Baltimore and Texas bats. But a couple guys to take note of there. If you have the money, but maybe not like Acuna money, I think Luis Roberts in a really good spot, assuming you're not playing Reed Detmers.
Gotcha. I wanted to throw one name at you because this is a pick I gave out for my home run call on the Better Sports Betting Show was Max Kepler. Kind of a hit or miss in terms of home runs, but we were talking about this earlier. Strider has had an issue with home runs. So the Twins lineup, they could strike out a ton, but I feel like 1 or 2 of these guys could go deep. And Kepler hitting third has had some good power numbers against right-handed pitching this year. Strider, could strike out 10 here, but he could also give up a solo home run or 2. So I think Kepler's a guy, we were talking about earlier, trying to pinpoint which guy might go deep. I think Kepler at 3,100 is like a lot better play than, he's cheaper than Alex Kirilloff, who's been struggling, cheaper than some other guys in the Twins lineup. So I think Kepler could be an option, value play, maybe for tournaments though.
Yeah, more tournament consideration for him. But yeah, I mean, whenever a righty's on the mound, you can throw him in consideration. I mean, you're going to have to live with a strikeout here and there, but against Spencer Strider, you're going to have to do that with everybody. But like we talked about, if you can pick the right guy that hits the home run off Strider, it's going to be low ownership because no one's going to be targeting these guys. So if it's a one-off play, just to kind of give yourself a little bit of potential, I'm I'm fine with it. Strider's allowed a couple homers to lefties this season. There's been a little bit of a home run bug for him of late, as he's, like five home runs over his last 3 outings. And his last one against Philly was like the first time in 6 or 7
Yeah,
starts
he didn't
allow
give
a
up
home
a
run.
homer. So I
Yeah.
feel like tonight
Yeah.
he's going to give up 1 or 2.
Yeah, he might be due. And prior to that, I mean, a home run in 6 or 7 straight. Actually, looks like 6 as I'm counting quick. Home runs weren't an issue before that, so kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, 3,100. Like if you're going to have to play somebody from Minnesota because you kind of want to chase the home run, I would be more willing to do it with Kepler.
Yeah, I mean, just a cheap play if you want a dart there. All right, so then let's build a lineup here. We got about 9 minutes left in this show, so let's build a lineup here. So pitchers, you going with Strider or Castillo? As I know you want Detmer, so who are you going with your first pitcher in though?
Yeah, we got 9 minutes, so we can always kind of play
Go
around with
back
it a
to
little
it.
bit. Go Strider and Detmers because it's always easy to take away money in terms
Yeah.
of like finding spots to add it. As long as you're cool with Detmers as SP2.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
All right.
All right,
First
then
base.
catcher.
Jonah Heim.
Yeah. First base. Do you want to go Newman here? I mean, we can obviously there's the Reds Orioles rain out possibility, but I feel like if we want to build this lineup, assuming the game's going to be played, right?
Yeah, kind of like you said, it seems like things are getting slightly more optimistic, more delay chance than postponement.
Yeah.
If Newman's going to hit leadoff, 324 average and 407 WOBA against lefties, Cole Irvin, 321 average allowed to righties with a 408 WOBA. Yeah, let's go Kevin Newman because we're going to have action in on this game. And if we end up stacking Orioles, Newman's the guy that we'll bring it back with. So I don't mind that.
All right. Second base.
Ugh,
second base is ugly now that we're looking at it again.
This position stinks. Well,
we could come back to second.
Yeah,
and then,
go to third.
Get Jung in at third.
Yeah, better believe it.
Short. I mean, do we go Westberg?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Outfield.
Boy, does that give a lot of flexibility.
It really does. When you can lock in a min-price player, and this is the thing. Before we fill out the rest, just with anything in DFS, when you get a guy that's just like first entered the player pool or just called up from the majors, or like in other sports, like a guy that's a backup that's now just like a starter, a running back that's now locked into 20 carries, or in basketball, a backup that's now the starting small forward for that night. It's just like it makes you feel good when you can lock in that min price or close to min price player. So that's Westbrook tonight. Hopefully he comes through, but a lot of people will probably be playing him.
Well, and that's the thing though. In a cash game, the free square is the free square. Most people are going to be on him. If he does great, you're not really benefiting. But if he does horrible, you're not the only one getting burned. So it's
exactly
cash games. Playing him's a no-brainer in cash games.
Yeah. All right. So outfield, where do you want to go?
Do you like from my home run call of Santander?
I do like that a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
He was a guy I looked at for props and stuff tonight too, because he's been on fire in the matchup against Williamson.
Yep, I am good with him. So we have Heim, we have Jonah Heim, we have Josh Jung. Do you want to put Leody Taveras in?
Yeah,
get another Texas bat. Should be 3,300.
Gives us plenty of room.
I'll tell you what, we could be shaping up, depending what we do on outfield, to drop Strider to Castillo and put Marcus Semien at second base. Just a quick little look at this, how the money's shaking out.
Okay.
We might be pretty darn close to doing that, depending what we end up doing here with the last outfielder.
Okay. Do you want me to do that now?
No, hold off, because if we can get Strider, I'd love to keep him. But
yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, so last outfielder. We've already kind of looked at a couple of these guys. We're done with Detmer, so I don't want to go with Luis Robert. Do you want to look at Nick Senzel?
Yeah, I was thinking Senzel, or I know you mentioned like Teoscar. Where was Senzel priced again?
Should be 39.
3,900. Yeah, I mean,
Put him
so
in,
what?
and then
So 4,500 for second base. Not a ton of great options at second.
no.
I do think, and yeah, if you go down from Strider and do Castillo,
Oh, that maths. Yep,
it
that
maths.
maths.
It maths exactly.
Oh, yep, there it is.
So there's your there's your Texas stack. So this is basically, I mean, we stacked Texas with some one-offs from both sides of the Cincinnati-Baltimore game, which this might be a popular, general build of maybe different bats from the Reds, Orioles, but especially Westberg will be in there as your cheap guy. But let's say we went back to Strider there.
Oof.
And left, we could leave Semien in and then go with
We'd
a
have to
different
go
someone else than
super.
send. Oh, that's real cheap. That's real
super
cheap.
cheap at outfield. I don't even know if we'd be able to. You'd almost have to drop.
What if you go from we got another minute here to play with. Let's drop Heim.
Okay.
Because catcher is always like, I don't know. I just feel like you could go cheap at catcher. Was there another cheap guy?
Do we look at Francisco Alvarez, righty on righty? I mean, I know Ray is more prone to against lefties, but saved us a couple hundred, and then we're down to 3,200 for the last outfielder.
Kepler,
I don't mind.
Mentioned.
Yeah, there's Kepler, and I also don't mind Tommy Pham. He's been better against righties too. I don't know how invested I want to be in the Mets offense, but I think you could look at a guy like Kepler or Tommy Pham there if you wanted to go this route. I think how we had it before with Castillo and Semien and whoever that last outfielder was that I can't remember. I think that was the lineup.
Yeah, I think that was a good lineup too. But I guess this is an alternate lineup if you want to go. We'll just put Pham in there, but
for sure.
Both those lineups could hit. But yeah, we're gonna wrap up here. Viraloff leading off at 2.8K, says Brendan on YouTube here. Yeah, if you want to go Viraloff for the Tigers, he's been hot lately too. So, or Vierling, not Viraloff. That's Alex Kirilloff in my head. All right. Well, appreciate everyone watching along here. We got to wrap up, but Colby Conway has been killing it here on DFS. Go check out all the DFS content over on fantasyalarm.com if you haven't already. And the show will be back tomorrow at 5:00 Eastern to talk more MLB DFS lineups. Appreciate everyone watching. Good luck.